Have you ever looked at it challenging behavior, maybe in a child, a student, or even yourself, and just wished it would stop? Well, today we're going to become behavioral detectives. We're going to explore the idea that behavior isn't just something to be erased, it's actually a message, a clue. And we're going to learn how to decode that message using a really powerful tool called functional behavior assessment.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll figure out what actually makes a behavior a problem we need to investigate. Then we get to the core mission, finding the why. After that, we'll learn how to gather clues using the simple ABC model. We'll meet our 4 usual suspects, the main reasons for behavior. Then we'll crack a couple of real cases, and finally, we'll see how all this understanding leads to real effective action.
All right, first things first. Before any good detective starts an investigation, they have to ask a critical question. Do we even have a case here? We need to figure out if a behavior is just a normal part of life or if it's something that really needs our attention.
I mean, think about it, right? We've all seen kids whine or cry or throw a toy. And sure, it can be frustrating, but these things happen with almost every kid, whether they have a diagnosis like autism spectrum disorder or not. So where is that line? When does something go from being typical kid stuff to a genuine problem we need to solve?
Well, here's kind of our checklist for when to open an investigation. We really start paying attention when a behavior is a risk to safety, when it gets in the way of learning, or when it causes someone to be isolated. But, if it's just an age-appropriate thing, like a toddler crying after getting a shot, that's probably not a case we need to crack. It really all boils down to the context and the impact it's having.
Okay, so once we've decided, yep, this is a problem behavior, our real mission begins. And that mission isn't just about making the behavior stop, it's about understanding. You have to remember, every single behavior is a form of communication. Our job is to translate what it's trying to tell us.
And this right here is our #1 tool for the job, the Functional Behavior Assessment, or FBA. It's this systematic process, a cornerstone of applied behavior analysis that helps us move past just reacting to what a person is doing. Instead, it forces us to ask that all-important question: why are they doing it?
So to find that why, every detective needs a good method for gathering clues. And in the world of FBA, our most powerful tool for observation is as simple as it gets. It's as easy as ABC.
But wait, before we even jump into the ABCs, we have to be crystal clear on what we're actually looking for. This is what's called an operational definition. It's not good enough to just say, the student had a tantrum. No, we have to describe exactly what we can see and hear. Something like, throws himself on the floor, cries loudly, and kicks his feet. That way, anyone who comes in to observe knows precisely what to look for.
And this 3-step model is the heart of our data collection. It's pretty straightforward. We write down the A, the antecedent. That's what happened right before the behavior. Then we record the B, the behavior itself, that clear action we just defined. And finally, we note the C, the consequence, what happened immediately after. Once we collect this data a few times, we start to see patterns emerge, and those patterns point us to the why.
So, after we've gathered all our ABC data from different times and places, we start connecting the dots. We're sifting through the evidence, looking for that consistent link between what happens before, the behavior, and what happens after. And that link almost always points to one of 4 primary motives. These are what we call our usual suspects.
At the end of the day, pretty much every problem behavior is trying to do one of 2 things: get something or get out of something. So, what are the 4 main things a person might be trying to achieve with their behavior?
Suspect number 1 is attention. And this could be good attention like praise or even negative attention, like being told to stop. It doesn't matter. For someone looking for that social connection, any kind of attention from a parent, teacher, or friend can be super reinforcing.
Suspect number 2, escape. This is when the behavior works to get the person out of something they really don't want to do. It could be a tough assignment at school, a chore at home, or even a social gathering. Think of the kid who acts up just to get sent out of a class they find really boring.
Third on our list is tangible. This one is all about getting access to a specific thing or an activity they want. It's the classic example of a child screaming in the store to get candy or crying until they get to use the tablet. The behavior is basically a tool to get something they can hold or do.
And our final suspect, and this one can be the trickiest to spot, is sensory. We call this automatic reinforcement. Basically, the behavior itself just feels good or stimulating to the person doing it. Things like rocking back and forth, humming, or hand flapping.
It doesn't need anyone else around because the reward is totally internal.
Okay, so there you have it, our 4 main suspects: attention, escape, tangible, and sensory. Now, a behavior might serve just one of these functions, but sometimes, and this is where the detective work gets really interesting, a single behavior can actually have multiple functions.
So the theory is great and all, but this is where the rubber really meets the road. Let's get our hands dirty, apply our ABC model and our list of suspects, and crack a couple of real-world case files.
All right, let's break down the evidence from our first case together. The antecedent, or the trigger, is that the teacher's attention is on another kid, Zaid. The behavior? Hashem throws himself on the floor, cries, and kicks. And now look at the consequence. The teacher immediately stops talking to Zaid and turns her attention right back to Hashem.
So, looking at that sequence of events, what do you think? What was Hashim's behavior trying to communicate? What was his goal?
Yep, if you guessed attention, you nailed it. The pattern is crystal clear. Hashim has learned, whether he realizes it or not, that this big behavior is a super effective way to get the teacher's focus right back on him. The consequence directly fed the function.
Okay, on to case file number 2. Here, the antecedent is a demand: solve this math problem. The behavior that follows is aggression, hitting someone. And the consequence? The student gets sent to the principal's office, which most importantly means they are removed from the math problem.
So what's the message here? Why did the student hit their classmate? What did they get out of that action?
Exactly. The function was escape. From the student's point of view, their behavior, while definitely not appropriate, was a complete success. It was a strategy that worked perfectly to get them out of a task they found difficult. The consequence reinforced the behavior.
Okay, so you might be thinking, great, we cracked the case, now what? Well, this is actually the most important part. Because figuring out the function isn't just a cool mental exercise. It completely changes how we respond. We can stop being reactive and start being proactive.
See, once we understand the why, our whole approach shifts. Instead of just punishing a behavior, we can teach a better one. If a child's behavior is telling us they need attention, we can teach them to ask for it with their words. If they're trying to escape a tough task, we can teach them to ask for a break. We're not just stopping a problem, we're giving them a new skill that meets that same exact need in a much better way.
And that really brings us to our final thought. The next time you see a behavior that makes you scratch your head, try putting on that detective hat. Instead of just seeing the action, ask yourself, what is this really trying to tell me? What's the function? I think you'll find that the answer changes everything.